This is Coder Radio, episode 314 for June 25th, 2018. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Coder Radio, Jupiter Broadcasting's weekly talk show, taking a pragmatic look at the art and business of software development and its related technologies. This episode is brought to you by our two great sponsors, Linux Academy and DigitalOcean. I'll tell you more about those great sponsors as this here show goes on. My name is Chris, and joining us every single week from what I believe may be a new location, it's our host, Mr. Dominic. Hello, Mike.
Hello, Chris, and if you can't hear the cacophony of dogs behind me, I am in a new location. I somehow found two more dogs.
Did you get dogs while you were off the air?
I didn't get them, but I'm dog sitting, and so one culture shock living in the South now is door-to-door sales is still a thing.
Oh.
And they only do it when you're on a show or a conference call.
Sure, right, and also thunderstorms also only make an appearance while you're trying to podcast. Everybody knows that, too. It's a weird scientific fact. I didn't know you had multiple dogs on premises. You have one dog of your own?
So I usually have two dogs, but they're used to like my weird lifestyle that they tend not to bark too much anymore. But wait, I have my mother-in-law's
What's so weird
dog.
about the lifestyle? What's so weird that the dogs have had to normalize to? What is that exactly?
Well, so there's a disagreement in my extended family about how dogs should be trained.
Oh, okay.
I believe that dogs should be trained not to bark.
Sure.
They believe that dogs are for protection and should be trained to bark. But the problem is door-to-door sales is a thing down here still, where it's not in New Jersey because it's mostly illegal in most towns. So that in like the afternoon, because I guess it's 97 degrees, that's when you want to do it. I don't know. Me, I'd be there at 6 a.m. Yeah.
Yeah, so I've had a similar challenge with my dog Levi. Because when we're parked at our home base, I want him to be a guard dog on alert because we actually had a stranger wander into our yard and it was very alarming and he did exactly what he was supposed to do. But then there's other times when we're on the road, we're at like rest stops and campsites where I don't want him to be a guard dog because it's normal for people to be getting in and out of their vehicles next to us and talking and having a picnic or whatever. So it's an impossible challenge for him. But this isn't doggy radio. That's not why we're here today. No, I'm not actually sure why we're here today other than it must be somewhat to talk about software development and its related technologies. And perhaps we eventually will get to the cost of pragmatism. Mike and I both have some thoughts on that. Plus, we just got done with a big batch of remote work, and we had a great conversation with the GitLab CEO about his thoughts on remote work. 100% remote work for GitLab. If you missed that chat, go grab that. So we'll get to some of that. But I got to start on a personal note here. I believe you're in a new location. It totally sounds different to me.
I am now in Riverview, Florida.
Hold on. I got to look this up. Riverview, huh? That's nice. Do you have a view of the river, or is that just a...
I do not.
Of course.
It's a bit more built up than Plant City was. It's a bigger house, growing family and all.
Yeah. Oh, congratulations. Good for you.
No additional children.
No, I just meant getting a nice, slightly larger place can be really nice. Florida to me is it's basically Orlando and Miami and maybe a little Tampa, and that's it. That's all
so Orlando, Miami, Tampa, and then, of course, Dagobah.
Oh, yeah, right, yes. Right there in the middle, right?
Right, it's like the rest of it's just Dagobah.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, look, that's a snake, and it's about 5 feet long.
So is this farther north in Florida, or is this down,
it's...
Midway, Florida?
I do not know why that just turned on. It's about 20 minutes northwest-ish, but it's barely west of Plant City.
Oh, okay. Do you need to go conquer an air conditioner for a moment? That's fine if you do.
No, there is some strange... So we could have a whole home engineering episode.
Oh, man.
Somewhere, I'm on the second floor of this house, which is kind of rare in Florida. Somewhere, there is a pump in one of these walls.
No.
I am going to find it.
A pump that just turns on randomly?
I think it's draining the HVAC system, but I have no idea where it is.
That is weird.
It is not in any of the obvious ducts where you could like easily access it. So Liam Neeson style, I'm going to find it. I'm going to figure out what it's actually doing. And I'm probably going to disconnect it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It turns on at random times. Yeah.
Not during the night, though.
Oh, no. It turns on like every 45 minutes.
No, we can't have that.
Yeah.
No, we can't have that. Oh, I found Riverview. Okay, so it's near Tampa. All right.
It's closer to Tampa than Plant City, yeah.
I see. Yeah, okay.
Comparatively speaking, Plant City is very rural,
yeah.
like a lot of farmland.
Sure.
Riverview is a little more built up. I had a fabulous beer and taco lunch today.
Nice.
By the way, today's beer of the week is High Ally by Cigar City Brewing in Tampa.
High what?
High Ally,
okay.
But J.
Okay.
Not yet.
All right.
No, not the high life that you're living. No, not your favorite magazine.
And not Heil Hitler, so that's good.
I have been watching the documentary on Netflix.
Oh, you got a McDonald's near you. That's nice. Good. Well,
moving on up.
I tell you, Florida is still on my list to travel to. I mean, I've flown there, but I've never driven there.
You know, there's a reason they don't have Southeast Linux Fest in Florida. I just want to say that.
Yeah. I've been to Texas though. So if I've been to Texas, I feel like
Texas is so much better.
Oh, okay. All right. Well,
I'm just throwing the gauntlet down. Do you know why? Because Linux Academy's in Texas.
That's true. And you know, so let's on the topic of remote work. I had the hookup. I got really lucky at Linux Academy because I parked alongside their building. And you see, in Texas, there's not a lot of shade. Shade's a real premium thing, and you can recognize the long-term Texas folks versus the people that are visiting, because the long-term Texas folk, they're like shade hunters. They like seek out shade. If there's a tree in a parking lot, they come up with creative ways to park under that tree. Somehow, a spot that could fit 2 cars suddenly is fitting 4 trucks in Texas. So shade was a massive premium, and I'd also gotten my awning damaged on the way down. I got hit by a truck, and it just didn't really hurt the RV, but it just totally damaged my awning, so I couldn't put it out to create shade. And so I'm parked on the side of the Linux Academy building, and I lucked out because I got the way the building's positioned in the afternoon, the hottest part of the day. The sun was on the other side of the building, and Lady Jupes was in shade. So I could, right as it was starting to get up to be about 90 something in the RV, shade would be there. Then the ACs could do their job, bring it back down to 79, 78. And I also was hooked up to 30 amps of power that they got wired for me during Texas Linux Fest, so I could run both air conditioners. And they just had their Wi-Fi system upgraded, so I was able to attach to their Wi-Fi and get really strong internet while I was working out of their parking lot. I worked for almost a month out of that RV, and one of the best connectivities, best parking situations I had in the entire trip was when I was rando parked in the Linux Academy parking lot down in Texas.
Really? So what was it that made their facility easier to work at?
It was definitely, the power, and the internet connectivity was really good. And having good, strong internet makes a huge difference when working remote. Going from like a tethered cell connection to like a wired, high quality, enterprise grade Wi-Fi network was really nice. But there's also something to like, I have my own space. I can go close a door. I can even lock that door. I have my fridge in there. I can do my own thing. But then when I need to go contact somebody or I need a resource, I could just go over to the building and walk inside and go grab somebody. That was really useful too. It was nice. It made it really efficient. I got their whole Linux streaming system all set up and ready to go. Got it installed in their CEO's office so he can fire it up when he wants to do a live stream. And did a whole bunch of other stuff while I was there too that just sort of was not planned, but just sort of came up. Did a whole bunch of other things. And a big part of it, I think, is I was there in the morning and I could be there in the evening. And I also didn't have like this end of day thing. Like people could leave and I could just like choose to go back into the office after dinner and just keep working if I wanted to. And so I got a key card and I went back in there and I finished up work like at 7 p.m. in the evening when nobody was there, and I could let Levi run around the whole office.
I imagine they're pet friendly then.
Yeah, they were pretty pet friendly. Yeah. And Levi, you see, he's special. He's not a service dog, he's a podcast dog, so he gets special privileges.
No, you know what? You and I, listen, we both suffer from some pretty acute mental illness.
That's true. I mean, I could call
our
him
dogs
dog.
count.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Our dogs totally count.
Yeah.
Now, so you went into their offices. Was there anything in their offices that you can talk about that you said, you know what, this is not a traditional office. This is definitely geared towards a hybrid or a remote team?
Yeah, so they have so for people listening that don't know, they have about 40% of their staff remote. And they have a policy where if you want to come in and work in the office, you can. They'll make space available for you. They'll try to make travel accommodations available for you. So one thing that I thought was weird, if you think about it from just like a business cost standpoint, is they just had a couple of open cubes with that were set up and kind of ready to go, but didn't have staff in them. So that way when staff visit, they have a place to work. Now, it's not weird, other than it just seems really expensive to do that, to have like dedicated.
It is weird. It is weird. So when you say ready to go, though, do you mean just like it's furnished? There's like connectivity.
Got a monitor. So all their machines.
Oh wow!
There,
so a whole workstation ready to roll.
Well, it's with a laptop. So all their machines there, for the most part, that I notice have like DisplayPort on them. So they all just they have like DisplayPort monitors at the desks. Yeah, and it was sort of just like, just let us know and we'll help you make it work, and you can come down here and work. And so I was able to use one of those spaces for a little bit.
So it's interesting. I told you a week before the GitLab CEO interview that we were going to do remote now at the Mad Botter. I was totally folding on the lease side, which is a very unpleasant process.
Yes.
Not the best thing you could do. But I made it optional. And not only has no one opted to show up to the office. Now, granted, there's only one person in Florida, or I take that back, close enough in Florida to actually show up to the office. I don't even show up to the office anymore. It's a complete waste. Like,
really?
Yeah. I was expecting you to say they have a bunch of automated scripts that when you go in there, you can like just Slack, and having everybody just have like FiOS alone has been more than enough.
Yeah, I mean, they got everybody on Slack there at Linux Academy, so that's definitely something they're doing.
So yeah, they're similar in that respect.
Mm-hmm. And they've got a few tools, but for the most part, it's nothing unusual, because so much of what they do is knowledge work. I think they want people to sort of be in the best environment to enable that, because it's so heady. It's courseware. It's teaching people. So it's like you're creating something that just requires a ton of focus. And then some of their teams, which seem to be more localized, seem to be like the marketing folk, some of the leadership team. Those people all seem to be local and have offices, and they come in, but they're also, they're in the area. They're in the Dallas area. So there's also a talent aspect to this. Is some of the talent, people that are really knowledgeable in AWS and Azure aren't necessarily in Dallas. They might be up in the Pacific Northwest, as an example. And so they've got people working up in the Pacific Northwest. And they're doing the same thing that we've noticed a couple other companies do, and that's those summits where they'll bring a bunch of teams together, or several teams together, and do like these micro summits where it's not the whole company, but it's a big portion of the company.
So a lot like the GitLab GitLab CEO was
and Canonical too. Yeah.
I don't believe in Canonical anymore because they promised me Ubuntu TV and I never got it. They're right up there at Mycroft.
Fair enough.
No credibility.
Mycroft has a new fundraiser they're doing too. It's just never ending.
You just have to be you know what? No, we're going to be positive today.
Yeah. Okay, sure. We could try that.
So I'm running Windows 10.
Oh, where did that come from? What happened to this whole Pop! OS stuff?
I'm still running Pop! OS 2. I'm dual boot.
Oh, okay. What happened? What precipitated this need to run the Windows operating system?
Well, you might want to edit this out, but capitalism makes horrors of us all.
I think there's nothing to edit out. That's true.
And I have a job, and it needs to be done.
Yeah,
it's a UWP job. So
I had to load Windows 10 recently myself, although for nothing so dirty. I was just updating a nav device that only updated with a Windows app, so I kind of had to load Windows. So how has this been, and what are you missing from Pop! OS?
I'm definitely missing a full Unix environment.
Yeah. Have you loaded the Windows subsystem?
I did, and I did the Ubuntu 18.04 version. It's just not the same. I mean, it's almost like having diet ice cream. If you're going to have ice cream, just go all the way, man. Just go Turkey Hill or Breyers or something. Don't lay your frozen yogurt on me, okay?
Hey. Froyo can be good, man. You just haven't had good Froyo.
Maybe I haven't. Froyo makes me sad. It's like a Duel's non-alcoholic beer. If you're gonna do it,
Yeah, it is.
just do it.
Yeah.
There's always the seduction of Windows in that like Visual Studio is really good. All those Steam games I've bought over the years are now very playable and look really good.
Yeah, that's a funny thing, huh?
Yeah, well, and because they're all a few years old and my card is new, so it's like, that's interesting.
Yep.
But it's the little things that get to you. However, it is nowhere near unusable. So like if this UWP thing actually takes off, I could see myself spending a lot of time in Windows. The loser here is actually not Pop, though. It's Mac.
Ah, sure.
I'm basically not using Mac at all. I'm using a split between Pop and Windows 10.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. It doesn't surprise me at all. I did this whole trip on Kubuntu. In the past, it would have required a Mac to at least a degree. But no, it's really the software has moved to be, more service-based, and that works on any platform. And I find that I can't really bring myself to buy the Mac hardware that would be required to run the software that I need. And I was just having a conversation with a fellow podcast editor who is using an editing suite I've never used, but it runs on Mac OS, and it needs about 16 gigs of RAM to do the projects that he does. And
that's the maximum you're going to get.
That's his issue, is he's got a MacBook and he can't get any more RAM in that sucker. He can't get any more RAM, and he's getting error messages that he's running out of memory in his editor. And he doesn't know what to do. He's like, I'm totally out of options. And I'm like, well, here's this thing I've been using on Linux you could try. And he's like, I want to stick with what I know.
Yeah, this isn't a Mac, Windows, Linux thing. This is just like a Dell, Apple thing. Like my Optiplex, which is the machine that runs Pop and Windows 10, just having 32 gigs of RAM, a much more modern i7, and a much bigger graphics card is, you know what? It really doesn't matter which OS I'm on. It's just better on all counts.
Yeah. And it just makes it easier for me to run VMs. It gives me more headroom to run VMs, which is very, very useful. It gives me more headroom to keep multiple applications open. I could use Slack now. Those things make a big difference. And so 32 gigs have become my minimum on any system that at least
I agree.
A work machine.
Although, so devil's advocate, though, is it that we're greedy, right? Like, 'cause I do look at it from a software architecture perspective. A reason that we're having all these problems with these lower powered machines is that, we're running a whole pile of Electron apps, right? Like I'm running giant projects in VS Code, which is like a big old bag of JavaScript and CSS. Slack is... have you ever opened up Activity Monitor or Task Manager, or I think Pop calls it Pop calls it Activity Monitor too. Yeah, and just seeing like how much memory and CPU Slack is using.
It's brutal. It's brutal because I'll be sitting with people who open up Slack on their laptops, and you'll hear the laptops fans start kicking up as Slack is opening. Slack.
Not so long ago, I owned PCs with less memory than Slack uses, routinely doing nothing. There is a part of me that's kind of like, are we just being spoiled brats here?
Yeah, right. Definitely. That's absolutely an aspect of it. I've run into this issue, though, with just some of the software I use, like the software where the web app you and I are using to communicate uses an incredible amount of CPU. And if you've got a lower end laptop, it just makes it cook. It just sits there and cooks the laptop. And, it is doing real time VoIP communication. So I suppose that is processor intensive.
Well, it's the old adage, things that are hard, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And so that's, there is also that end of the spectrum. With build time, software that pushes the cores to the limits, there is some absolute legitimate software that's taking advantage of that hardware. But a big part of it is this
waste.
Yeah. Yeah. This waste. Yeah. And I guess you could attribute it to abstraction. You could attribute it to trying to bring down it's trying to bring down the cost of development. It's putting the burden of cost onto the users. You're trying to bring down the cost of making multiple platform applications like Electron applications, right?
The problem is, like, I was young, but I was there, right? My first gig was doing Java applets, which we've talked about more than once on the show. But like that was a horrible, tried in the Nuremberg war crime of software development in the name of abstraction, right? In the name of cross-platform. And that was a lie. in the early 2000s. It was a lie in the 90s. It's still a lie today. I mean, you know what? I'm trying to like get on the Electron train, but if you just like dig into it, how it actually works, it's really bad.
Mm-hmm.
From if you have like any, I don't want to say old fashioned, but correct me if I'm wrong, or correct me if this is a bad way to phrase this, but any respect for resources on the system, Electron is just like an abomination. And I don't mean that. I don't mean that like it's like people should feel bad. Like the Electron engineers did a fantastic job, and the community should be very, very proud of what they've done.
Yeah, it's not a bash. It's just a reality.
But no, bash is very efficient. See what it did? It violates what, at least for me, were rules I was taught very early on.
Yes.
And it violates them in like dramatic ways, right?
And when you look at old software development, you would see these amazing heroics that they had gone through to bend themselves and twist themselves to save kilobytes of disk or memory, or bytes in some cases. And not to turn this into an old man thing, but I legitimately remember a time when I could have an entire graphical operating system and a video game on an 800 kilobyte floppy disk, and that's how
sure.
I would boot up into a kind of like a unitask environment. It had its limitations, but it was remarkable what they could get done. Now that said, look who now owns Electron: Microsoft.
That's
now,
right. That didn't even occur to me because it's part of the GitHub purchase.
Right. So maybe Microsoft has a few ideas here. In fact, I think that's part of why Microsoft bought GitHub. Is I think I've been hearing rumblings for a long time, that the quote unquote new Skype that we all have now was Microsoft really testing the waters on rebuilding a lot of their software that runs on the desktop in Electron. That they've been
we have to pause the show. I'm going to go cry in a corner right now.
Well, I think they looked at it and they said, these are the limitations, but if we own the stack, maybe we make this thing more modular. Maybe instead of a Chromium backend, it's a modular backend. It could be Edge, it could be Firefox.
So, I have so many questions here, but finish.
I'm just saying, like, it's possible Microsoft could improve this situation now that they are the proprietors of Electron. Could happen.
I mean, anything's possible, right? If you're maintaining and leading the project, you could basically do whatever you want. But the idea of Electron running software in its own dedicated Chromium VM, and I know that's like people are going to mince those words, but you know what I mean, instance of Chromium, is always going to be heavy.
Yep.
Because for every application, you are spinning up an entire, there's no shared resources there.
For better or for worse, yeah.
And there are reasons you might want to do that. You know what? You don't have pollution from the system if somebody's a jackass and doesn't maintain their PC, which could happen. But like, I just want to track back a little bit. You mentioned your floppy disk having a game and an OS on it. I'm slightly younger than you, so we had like the original CDs. Like, but remember the original CDRs? It was like 4x speed or whatever.
Oh yeah,
super slow. Mm-hmm. But it was like, can you write a program that can fill this CD? I bet you can. You know what? I could not. Right.
It was too much. It was like 600 megabytes.
Right, 600 meg. It was a dramatic, and my machine only had like a gig. So, Windows at the time took a good portion of that. I just I don't want to sound like another podcaster who whines about web browsers being terrible, but there is some truth in it that like, geez, go to theverge.com and look at the memory usage in Chrome.
Yeah.
And look at like how many different HTTP and other requests. And I don't mean to pick on The Verge. I love The Verge, but that's also why I'm picking on them, because like they're a tech website and they're doing this.
Yep.
Right.
Yep. And it's bad. And Firefox is slightly better. That's one of the reasons I've switched over. But
I'm a Firefox user as well, except for the show.
Except for all the Electron apps we use, right?
But there is an IE6 factor about Chrome now.
Yeah.
Right. There's a little bit of a yeah.
Speaking of Electron apps, I'm using MailSpring here, and we got an email in from Ralph. I like it. MailSpring is it's not the best mail client I've ever used, but it's progressively getting better and better. It It's based on the Leus, which I thought was a great mail client, and it still has that super cool, kind of creepy click tracking, where it's like really sophisticated read receipt, really sneaky read receipt stuff. I love that. So
it's usually an invisible pixel in the email somewhere.
I think that, it's like, but it works with plain text, and I think it's somehow they have like an intermediary server that gets pinged when they open your email somehow. I don't know exactly how it works. I forget. I actually had it explained to me. I'm just a dumb man. But we got an email from Ralph. He said, Michael this week tweeted, is anyone else finding Java 10 a really powerful answer to Kotlin? I find myself wondering why these improvements didn't come, say, in JDK 8, and really considering just going pure Java rather than Kotlin and Java. So Ralph asked you to elaborate and give an example where maybe you would have used Kotlin, but now could have used just straight Java in itself. Sounds like you were giving Java 10 some love on the Twitter this week.
I was. Every once in a while, I go down a rabbit hole and I try something. Very fitting. I have a little side project I occasionally work on called Wonderland. Haha, the Mad Butter.
Oh, I love it.
And it's a Kotlin-based Java Spring app. What it does is not super relevant to this conversation, but a lot of the things I like in Kotlin, such as, just like a little... So there's a lot. So, okay, one thing you have to understand, let me just backtrack a little bit. The last time I heavily used Java, other than like for one project, was like Java 5. So Java at the time was very strict and very annoying. I love Java. But Java 10, just introducing the var keyword, I know Java folks love to hate on it. That's actually a good thing to have because it's really annoying to have to remember your types. The new module system, while an epic pain in the ass if you have existing code because it doesn't work the same way, is exactly the type of thing the Java language needs. Having said all of that, I think my tweet is maybe a little overboard. I was a little too exuberant in my love of Java 10 because, the power of Java, Chris, is not the Java language. It's not Kotlin. It's not Scala. It's actually the Java platform, the JVM.
Yeah.
And the interop between them. Right now, I prefer, if I'm writing Java, to just write Java, which is true. And one of the things I do like is a lot of the niceties in Java 10 are obviously influenced by Kotlin and like other languages. Like, for instance, remember, I'm coming originally from Java 5. So lambdas are completely new in Java to me, right? Like, I've done a little bit with them, but like the niceties brought in Java 10 and Java 9 are a big step forward. And I've been writing a lot of C#, which in many ways is a frankly better version of Java. I don't even know what to say. But Java 10, and this is actually probably what I should have tweeted, but I used Kotlin. Java 10 is I hate to say it this way, but really Java catching up to C#. Both in syntax with the whole var keyword stuff and some of the figuring out the types, but also just the niceties of you don't need to like type all this crap out. It just works.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now, it is not a clean, easy change. And I'm not going to go into detail on the module system here, but I actually read a great book. It's you can buy it at O'Reilly. They're not a sponsor. This is just me recommending a book.
Could you imagine if O'Reilly was a sponsor? Okay, what's the book?
Sign me up for those Marco Arment iMac purchases.
Yeah.
It's Java 10 modules by O'Reilly. I'm sure you could find it online.
Yeah, I'll try to put a link in the show notes if I can find it.
If you've done particularly legacy Java as I have, it's a substantial change in how you might organize your Java projects and in particular how the module system works. But I'm of two minds on it. Moving an older project, like I have something I did for a client maybe a year ago that's in Java 7. And if they ever wanted to upgrade it to Java 10, it would be probably a nightmare because of how imports work.
Oh.
Or if you wanted to use the new module system, it would be a nightmare. But anything greenfield, I think this is a much, much saner approach. It's a little daunting. Like, I'm not going to lie to you. If you read this Java 10 modules book, it's a bit dry. but for good reason. You're getting down and dirty into how the system actually works. Like if your criticism, if you're one of the 4 guys on Reddit who says we're not detailed enough, this is the book for you. You're going all the way down.
Now,
and it doesn't work with Android yet. Ha!
Oh.
Use Kotlin on Android though.
I think you are a mind reader, Mr. Dominic, because mobile is exactly where I was going with that. All right. That's a lot to think about. I appreciate that. And thank you to Ralph/Richard. I'm not quite sure which one you go by. Thank you for sending that in. We have another email that came in from John. We're just going to go by John. And it's
Juan.
right.
It's sexier.
Go by Mr. Juan. And it's right
Juan
on
Domingo.
Right on our topic of Microsoft buying GitHub and Electron. So we'll continue on. He has some really. He took. I should have read his email because I just saw that come in because I just did a little filter sort and his email popped up as one I hadn't read yet. And he has a better case for what Microsoft could do with Electron than I did. He's given it some thought, so we'll cover that. I want to also mention, though, Linux Academy. linuxacademy.com/coders. You go there to support the show and sign up for a free 7-day trial. It's never been a better time because they just launched a whole bunch of content in April, all new stuff. And then in July, they're doing an even larger launch, a massive, epic 150-plus courses, challenges, and learning activities are coming to the Linux Academy platform. Hands-on, scenario-based labs to give you experience on real servers with self-paced, in-depth video courses on every Linux, cloud, and DevOps topic. And if you ever get stuck, well, then be struck by the fact that they have full-time mentors that are there to help you, real human being trainers that are there for you. Also, coming up next week, this week, June 27th, as we're recording right now, they're doing a webinar on automation with AWS and AWS security as well, and automating AWS security. Trends in AWS security, security automation, incident response, logging and monitoring are just some of the topics that they're going to cover in a webinar, a free webinar, about 45 minutes or so, 10:30 Central Time, Chicago time is how I call it, is what I usually call it. 10:30 Chicago time. And then it'll be on Wednesday, June 27th of this week. And you go to linuxacademy.com, get a link to that. And I would really suggest you get a taste of this because you get to hear from a couple of people that are involved in creating the AWS courseware for Linux Academy. So you get an idea of the people behind the content. Trent's going to be there. He's their AWS course author. And Mark, who's also an AWS course author, is going to be there. And then Tom, who is a great guy, lives just a little bit south of me in Portland. He's their AWS head of content, and he's going to be there as well. So you get a good insight into some of the AWS team making content for Linux Academy. And you can get started with all of it by going to linuxacademy.com/coders and then signing up for a free 7-day trial. Thanks to Linux Academy for sponsoring the Coder Radio program. That's linuxacademy.com/coders. Okay, so we have an email from Juan, and he says, I was listening to episode 312, and I had a thought about Microsoft's move with Electron. Microsoft has .NET Core, and they do command line and web, but not cross-platform desktop stuff. Microsoft also has WPF for .NET Framework for the Windows desktop. But what if they modified or made hooks in Electron so you could write C# Electron apps so their enterprise customers can use C# and .NET Core and target cross-platform development? This would allow developers of their platform to target mobile, web, desktop, and servers. That's kind of where I was going, but Juan there put it in way better words than I could because he's right. They could take advantage of .NET Core.
So he's wrong.
Oh.
But he's right.
Oh.
It has nothing to do with WPF or UWP. By the way, it would be UWP, not WPF at this point. I'll give you 4 letters. WASM. WebAssembly. There is absolutely no reason, and in fact this already exists, where C# can compile into WebAssembly. Microsoft could not release, now that they own Electron components with, in fact, you don't even need it, but like nicer C# API hooks that simply compile directly into WebAssembly and run in a Chromium or, may God have mercy on our souls, Edge.
No, just don't put it out there. Just don't put it out there.
Don't even say it, right? Just like don't say it. But like there's absolutely no reason that can't happen. In fact, that should happen. And yeah, WebAssembly In a lot of ways, I think WebAssembly is the compromise between you and I wanting things to be native. It's fair to call Chris a nativist, I think.
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
And the reality of people, software.
Oh, sure, yeah. Yeah. Okay.
No, we're both nativists when it comes to software.
Yeah.
I know that's a loaded term. Thanks, Donald. It is already true, right, that compiling JavaScript to WebAssembly, you get some pretty performant code. Now, I know, please don't email me, it's not like Go or C++ performant, but it's a hell of a lot better than JavaScript running in a Node container or Chromium.
Mm-hmm.
We also have that we can compile other languages to WebAssembly. Many other languages. In fact, Kotlin, we just talked about, has a tool for this. I believe Java does too. I know for a fact C# does. And I'm sure we could go down. TypeScript does. I'm sure we could keep going down and down the list here, but it's a waste of time. If those compilers, right now we're into something that's been going on since the 70s or really late 60s, optimizing compilers.
Yeah,
that's something people are really good at.
Mm-hmm.
I am not one of those people. Chris is not one of those people. But if you're telling me that we're compiling into something and all we're doing is writing a compiler layer, then that makes a lot of sense. And if you happen to own something called Electron, which does have a collection of widgets and things you can use to develop your application in a HTML5 environment, and WebAssembly is completely compatible with that, well, geez, you also have this incredibly popular, incredibly powerful, incredibly productive programming language called C#, or maybe F#, depending on what you're doing. Why can't both of those compile into WebAssembly?
Oh, man. Now you're getting me excited.
The answer is they can, right? It's an open source project right now, but Microsoft has been very keen to adopt open source projects. They have the Roslyn compiler, which we don't talk a lot about on the show, but it's a very powerful compiler, which is like their compiler in the cloud. Actually, if you're doing .NET on Visual Studio Code, not Visual Studio proper, but on code, your compiler is Roslyn. It's a Roslyn-powered compiler. Incredibly modern, incredibly powerful, I believe, and someone who's more of a deep .NET guy than I am right now, although I keep getting deeper. It's .NET is like heroin. I just keep I took that first hit, Chris, and
it's that Pacific Northwest mix. We make it good over here.
They offered me free coffee, man. But it's funny. They have all the parts. They have all the pieces of the puzzle here to say Electron is going to be not. See, they have to drop the whole. It's running in like a. This is going to get a little in the weeds, but what's happening now when you're running an Electron app is you're effectively running a browser window.
Yeah,
and it's actually running JavaScript code as though we're in that browser.
Right.
That's bad. What should happen is, let's say we're running. I'm going to use the word browser, but I have this theory that in 5 years, what we today call a browser, there's going to be a separation between a web browser and there's going to be some other word. I'm going to call it web platform.
Runtime, maybe?
Web runtime. I like it. That runs just WebAssembly code as though it were. I mean, the best analogy I can use is like if you're a Java guy, the JVM, if you're a Microsoft guy, the CLR.
Yeah.
It's just a layer that runs, we're going to have to get a little dirty here, Chris, but like on Java, you have your Java, your Scala, your Kotlin code. That compiles into bytecode, which runs on the JVM. On the .NET side, to use the .NET equivalent, you have your C#, your F#, because you're a morally bankrupt Visual Basic code. And actually, we have a bunch of other shit like Iron, Ruby, Iron, Python, but it doesn't matter.
Yeah, okay.
Compiles into what they call IR, intermediate runtime, I believe is what that's called, but I could be wrong. Or IRL, intermediate runtime language. That runs on what they call the CLR. It is not true that they're technically equivalent, but their function is the same. The JVM and the CLR run the compiled midway code, the bytecode and the IRL. Why can't we have that for WebAssembly? And the answer is we can. And now that Microsoft owns Electron, I'm pretty sure we will, right?
I wonder, right?
It's not going to be like super native like me and Chris would like, but it's going to be pretty damn close. I mean, you can play Doom, you can play Quake in WebAssembly.
Yeah.
And hopefully it's going to dislodge. See, the thing is, WebAssembly needs to be its own open standard, not linked to Chromium. Which, and let me tell you something, Microsoft, no one wants that more than Microsoft. So this is where I think, this is the area of the GitHub purchase where I am most excited, because I would prefer things be native, but it's just not going to happen. So let them not be ridiculously run, super inefficient Electron apps. Let's turn Electron into something that basically is like the .NET runtime, the CLR, the JVM, the Java platform. I know we're commingling terms here, but basically let's let it be right in the language you like, compiled to WebAssembly, and it's going to be near, not exactly, but near native performance. End of rant.
Man, I'd love to see that. All right, one last email to just round out the .NET stuff for today. This one comes in from Grant, and he's trying to escape .NET. He says, I'm currently a junior .NET developer, about 2 years of experience, and I feel trapped in the .NET universe. How does one go about making a shift into something more appealing? In my case, like C, C++ might be it, maybe some Rust development. I have some college, but no formal degree, no plan on finishing one really, but I could maybe, he says, sorry, I could plan on finishing it from 2 years from now. I do feel like this influences my situation a lot, but your ideas on how to bust out of .NET and move into an area that appeals to him more, like C, C++, and Rust. And should the part of that solution be finishing up schooling, getting a degree?
No.
Okay, all right. So we're both on the same page with that one. Don't bother with that.
To my knowledge, you have no degree, Chris, and I have a medieval literature degree. I think he's fine.
Yeah, and a lot of the people I work with have degrees in fields that are completely different than the ones they work in.
Completely different.
Not true for everybody. So for some people, it's a really good investment. But for others,
any poetry questions, I am your man.
I know several IT guys who have English degrees and things like that. So I would, and interviewing, I would absolutely, by a factor of 10, prefer to see a couple of years of development experience in anything than having somebody fresh out of school. Now,
it's all about the GitHub profile.
Well, having both is also good, right? That's even better, perhaps. But if you've got 2 years of .NET development experience, you're, I think, Grant, in a better position than you're giving yourself credit. What do you think, Mike?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the question is, what do you want to do? There's a lot of ways to transition from one technology to another. I am not super knowledgeable on Rust, as the subreddit sometimes complains on a quarterly basis. C++ I could talk to you about, but I'm not entirely sure why. See, the problem is I'm not sure what kind of applications or what kind of software you're looking to write. Because there are things that you might think would be written in C++ that could also be written in .NET, right? And if it's just that you want a different vertical, then maybe you don't need to switch technologies. However, let's say you want to do, I don't know, more performant server software. And I say that because you mentioned Rust. Okay, so just do it, right? I mean, no one's going to... I don't know, it's weird, because if he had said mobile, I would say, okay, well, just do yourself a little Xamarin project on the side. Rust is a little weird. I mean, Chris, what do you see Rust being used for? This is probably a bigger conversation. But
important low-level stuff. I could see...
right, server data processing is what I'm thinking.
Or I could see a lot of OS tools being rewritten over time. Things like that. We got a similar email by viewer Jake, who wrote in and said, what are your suggestions... And what do you do for software web engineers and developers who are looking to transition to a new job but don't have enough time to spend on a full side project? Like they're sort of stuck between worlds. Sounds like that's also what's happening to both of them. They're just sort of stuck between worlds.
I mean, I would say for me, this is an area of weakness only because I haven't had a job in over a decade.
Yeah, it's one of those too where I'll tell you the answer is it sucks. The answer sucks so bad because it's...
I think you just have to do it, right? You have to suck it up and not sleep for a couple weeks.
Well, and nobody wants to hear that. And the other thing too is like a lot of times these opportunities become available to you when you've been spending time on making connections. So it's
going
like this,
to the meetups. Yeah.
Yeah. Going to the meetups or hanging out with some group on Discord or Mumble. being involved in a community. A lot of times, the way life works is things that you never thought would lead to paying off in some way lead to paying off right at the time when you're starting to pick up interest in something. So you've done 50% of it. You've identified that you want to change, and you have an interest in the area you want to go. But because of your situation, I'm guessing, I'm kind of being generous here, Jake, but I'm guessing that you haven't had the time to invest in IRL relationships, in this case, in real life relationships, because you're probably too busy working or taking care of home life. That's almost where you have to start, and it's a frustrating answer because I've been there. You want to just get in and start working. You want to start writing code. You want to just get started. And the answer I have for you is go drink a few beers, relax with some people, and play some video games. Go be super unproductive for a little bit. But what you will be doing is opening yourself up to opportunities.
Yeah, like I've been going to a few things over in Tampa now, and the best thing you could do is drink some beer. And if you get a DUI, it's not my fault. So. But I kind of want to push back a little bit on them. If you are a software engineer with any experience, technologies change, right? The world changes. Like, I don't know. You could argue that my specialty is still Objective-C, but I don't write Objective-C anymore. I mean, I mostly do like project management, crap like that.
You know what I've been thinking about
And then
recently?
when I code, I'm doing C#. Go ahead.
Because you're hitting on something I've been thinking about is like, what do I really do? Maybe what I really do is, this is going to sound super hippie, but maybe what I really do is cultivate community. Maybe that's my actual job.
I think that is what you do. Oh, no, I think that's actually what you do. Yeah. For you, absolutely.
Which is weird, right? Because I would have told you it's recording podcasts if you would have asked me a couple of weeks ago. But while I was on this road trip and I just had so many great experiences with the folks, like we still have a Telegram group going in our Texas meetup group because everybody there is just so great. We all became friends. Like, I'm going to be friends with those people forever. And I don't know. It really is like there's your job and then there's your actual job. And I thought my actual job was recording, but I think it is actual community building. And so just like you, it's like what you could say it's an Objective-C developer, but is it really that anymore? It's like which one's on paper? There's like a tangible version of my job and an intangible version of my job. Does that make sense?
No, it makes perfect sense. I mean, for me, it's a situation where if something Objective-C does come in, and something did come in like 3 months ago, like a legacy app that needed an update, yeah, I'm the only guy in the organization right now who can do it. But that doesn't happen, right? Because it's a dated technology. So I'm either, honestly, most of the time, I'm doing a lot of architecture, project management, things like that, salesy stuff. Or if I'm coding, I'm usually coding in something like JavaScript or C#. Maybe Kotlin if I go on a Kotlin bender.
Or depending on the project, I imagine.
Depending on the project, but like on average, it's mostly C# right now. And knowing Objective-C helps. And that's kind of my objection here. You don't lose your knowledge of software engineering by changing technologies.
Right.
You may be mildly annoyed that like you're working in, if you're changing to Rust, that you don't have Visual Studio anymore. But you still know like basic software engineering patterns. You know how things ought to work. And it's just really learning the syntax and learning the way to program in that language idiomatically.
Yeah, it's true. It's very much true. And so he's not, our original emailer there is not giving himself enough credit. He'll probably find himself to be in a much better position.
I think they're both fine, actually. I mean, it's now the problem is
you need an opportunity, though. You need an opportunity.
You need to do the networking, as Chris suggests, is what I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so going back to community, couple of thoughts on that. In our chat room right now, XMN is in our chat room. I got a chance to meet XMN once in person. I'll never forget that encounter. And now I have a face to that name. It makes a big difference. I don't know if, who knows if it'll ever be of consequence in the future. Maybe we'll have another chance to meet up. Maybe it means he hangs out in our live chat room more often, which is, it's a benefit to the show to have people in our chat room. We love people showing up live. So however you can do it, do it. Check out meetup.com. I know that's basic bitch advice, but check it out. For an example, like
meetups. host them.
Linux Academy just built a huge meetup space in their Keller office with like a big screen television and tables to serve food, so that way they can have students that are in the area come hang out. It works. You know, we've had barbecues here at the studio, and that's how Wes started working with the network. Is he was at one of the barbecues, and now he's been working with the network for like 2.5, 3 years, maybe more. Tomorrow on Linux Unplugged, Brent is joining me while Wes is on vacay. Brent's joining me. Well, Brent and I met at Linux Fest Northwest, and he hung out at the studio during a barbecue. And now we've been chatting back and forth on Telegram, and he and I are both looking forward to him joining me tomorrow on Linux Unplugged. These meetups work. DigitalOcean, another sponsor of ours, do.co/coder, no S, do.co/coder. Go there to get $100 credit. But they also do meetups. There's DigitalOcean meetups in all kinds of cities all over the place. And if you want to create a meetup, you can work with DigitalOcean to get assistance. Now, you don't need a lot in common. But if you're just DigitalOcean users, that can be the starting ground. Check out our sponsor, do.co/coder. You go there, you sign up with that URL with a new account, you get a $100 credit for 60 days. My favorite rig is 3 cents an hour, so this is really going to last you a while. It's incredibly fast infrastructure that you can deploy within minutes. It's all SSDs, enterprise-grade SSDs, 40 gigabit connections coming into the hypervisors, global data centers all over the world, so you can get something that's really fast and responsive for the users in your area. Simple, smooth, easy to understand DNS management. So if that's not your strong suit, managing DNS, don't worry. It's super simple to get set up. They got guides and documentation all along the way, but it's all about that UI. It's so simple and easy to understand and very straightforward. And if you just want to handle it with a script or a program or maybe an app on your phone, they've got a fantastic API that's incredibly well documented, and their own website is a client of that API. So pretty much guaranteed to do everything you want to do. They have cloud firewalls that block traffic at the network level so they never even touch your rigs, monitoring and alerting so you can stay on top of stuff before anybody that's using your services notice. Plus, it gives you great metrics and a 99.99% uptime. You can get started in less than a minute. You can deploy an entire stack. Say you want to get going with GitLab. Boom, one-click deployment, entire stack of GitLab. Or do like I do. This is my preferred system now. Ubuntu LTS, I deploy that with Docker. Just those two things. It's just the LTS release with Docker. Now, the way I have it set up on my DigitalOcean account is whenever I deploy a system, it automatically pre-installs my SSH keys. Think about that for a second. Now, I will admit, I just use the key. I don't use the passphrase as well. It's just the key. But that means when I set up the system, boop, boop, Chris at boop, 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 and enter, and I'm logged in. It's just magic. And you're up and working in seconds. And it makes the difference from, hey, you know, one day I should try this, to, gosh, I got 2 minutes. Why don't I give this a go? That makes all the difference. And then it's so fast and so reliable. With industry-leading price to performance, it's easy to put in production. Just get started by going to do.co/coder. And a big thank you to DigitalOcean for sponsoring the Coder Radio program. do.co/coder. And have some fun with that. They have some incredibly fast systems. Mr. Dominic, we were going to get to the practical versus idealism, which is also sort of about that tangibles and intangibles. I wonder if we could kick it off and then finish it next week, or if we could actually just fit it all into this episode. What do you think?
I think we should do it next week.
You want to punt it? All right.
Punt.
We can punt it. I think I have enough to actually dedicate an episode to it, because it's something along with this community and traveling and meeting up with people. Like, how do you make any of that like actual tangible stuff versus just being very, very practical?
I have a few more stuff on the community thing.
Oh, yeah?
So
go ahead.
So several times since I've been down here, I've had Coder Radio listeners email me and meet me for lunch or for a beer. And I've heard some really interesting engineering ideas out of those. One in particular, I'm hoping to hear back from you, man. That was he was going to revolutionize serverless technology.
Oh.
It was pretty impressive sounding. And it was all written in everybody's favorite language.
Swift.
Go.
Oh.
No, their actual favorite
language. Yeah.
I mean, I guess their favorite's Rust, but
yeah, that's second
Rust
favorite.
Doesn't. Yeah. Yes.
Is that it? Is that all you had?
That's all I got.
I have a story, but I can't share it with you on air. I met up with a startup founder who's working on something in the medical space that I'll have to share with you. Yeah. All right. Well, how about we wrap it up with one more email? What do you think?
Sure. Let's do it.
All right. So Bruno writes in, hey, Bruno, nice to see you. Bruno says, hello, guys. First of all, I appreciate the improvement on Mike's audio quality. Mike has been sounding great. Well, that's great. Thank you.
You're not going to love this episode.
I know it's not so bad. Not so bad. Now, I've listened to your last show where Mike states that he does not see any advantages for using TypeScript instead of just vanilla JavaScript. Well, I see one big advantage. It's strong typing. As it seems, Mike doesn't miss strong typing on JS when he's coding. I would like to ask Mike, what do you do when you're working with large code bases of JavaScript and say you need to perform a refactoring? Do you find then that things like TypeScript could be an advantage? Also, have you? He's asking, how are you liking VS Code so far? Essentially, is what he's asking versus say like IntelliJ's IDEA.
Sure.
So it's kind of two questions in there.
Yeah, so I'm going to answer it backwards. So I use VS Code for different things than I do use IntelliJ for. I like it fine. I use VS Code as a text editor. I use IntelliJ as an IDE. Now I know if you add enough plugins to VS Code, it effectively becomes a text editor, but that is not how I'm using it. Having said that, I am having a little bit of Electron fatigue, as we talked about earlier in the show, so I'm not sure where I'm going. I'll probably end up sticking with VS Code just because I have a lot of stuff set up in it now. And inertia's a thing.
I just did a Sublime Text, Atom, VS Code shootout on the road trip, and
go for you.
I settled on VS Code. Part of it was because it worked best on my system in high DPI. And part of it was because
the Linux support on high DPI is very good. That is one of the reasons I'm on VS Code and not Atom, actually.
Yeah. And the other one is now it's a snap. So it's just snap install VS Code --
Well, and it's in the pop store for me. So like, and obviously the Windows support is very good when I'm working on Windows.
Yeah. I mean, those things put it over the top because the snaps are self-updating and, VS Code's under active development and the high DPI support. So VS Code's what threw it in for me. Yeah. So then he also thinks, what about working with really large JavaScript projects and say you got to do some refactoring?
It's a problem. I'm not gonna lie to you. It's a huge pain in the ass. I mean, that is where something like WebStorm from IntelliJ becomes a lot more useful because it does have some refactoring tools. But again, with JavaScript, that can be limited. My issue with TypeScript right now is actually, as I've dug deeper into it, not a TypeScript issue. It's a Node issue. In that the way Node works, you have to compile a TypeScript to JavaScript. This is actually coming full circle to our topic from earlier today about my vision for a WebAssembly kind of future.
Yeah.
If TypeScript compiled directly into WebAssembly, I think it would be an obvious choice over JavaScript every day of the week.
Yeah.
Now, would C# be a better choice than TypeScript? And that's probably a matter of preference. But my issue is, yes, I know there are plugins that do this, but without using a plugin, when I code in TypeScript, the error I get is in the, if I'm debugging, is in the JavaScript that it compiles. Of course, there are plugins that do some reflection to get back to it. I think the ideal world that I think we're very close to in the case of TypeScript is going to be TypeScript compiles directly into WebAssembly. Now, I know it's possible to do that already, but the reality of Node and the way Electron and a bunch of other environments work is that you're just not doing that. Once we get there, I completely agree with you that TypeScript is the better option. Until we're there, I'm very dubious on using plugins to do reflection back from the compiled JavaScript into the original handwritten TypeScript code. But my sincere hope is that this whole conversation becomes moot. Because we are, honestly, I think this time next year, all this compiling into JavaScript nonsense is done. I think it will be maybe not standard, but it will be common enough to just compile into WebAssembly that, people who are more aggressive like I am, and I think like if you're a listener to the show, you probably are, will just do that. And the debugging tools and the paradigms will just be easier to work with. You won't have to have kludgy plugins and things like that to get the reflected back JavaScript. And so long story short, yes, once we hit that world, JavaScript would not be my first choice. TypeScript would be pretty high up there. Although honestly, I might go all the way up to like a C# or a Java for that need.
Well, Mr. Dominic, that's probably a good spot to leave it right there. I have so many thoughts on all of this, but you and I are going to record another episode in just a little bit since we didn't make last week. So keep an eye out on your RSS feed for that, because that'll be coming to a Coder Radio near you very soon. Coder.show is where you go to get links to everything we talked about, as well as our RSS feeds. Mr. Dominic, is there anywhere you would like to send people throughout the week to get more you in their face?
Directly to the bowels of hell and to @Dumanuku on Twitter.
Why not? I'm @ChrisLAS, and follow the whole network @Jupiter Signal. Thanks so much for being here, and we'll see you actually probably less than a week away.